it's the other video I said I was going to make describing the installation of the SS-650 quick fuel carburetor on the 78 Vet that I have. And I wanted to go over a few things that I encountered when I put this on. First of all, I want to say that this carburetor worked great right out of the box, much better than the Holley that I had. And I think it's because it was actually made more for the camshaft that I have. And like I mentioned before, it has lots of tuning features on it, which I haven't even touched. And it just seemed to be perfect right out of the box. So I highly recommend, if you're interested in a new carburetor and something different than a Holley, I would call Quick Fuel and talk to them and let them help you decide which one's best for you, because this one here is great. But the couple things I want to talk about that I encountered was when I went from the vacuum secondary carburetor to the mechanical secondary, my secondary accelerator pump hit my vacuum elbow that I had on the manifold underneath that goes to my vacuum booster for my brakes. So I bought a low profile elbow and put that on there, and the carburetor still hit that. So I ended up getting from Transdapt a 3/8 inch open spacer, which I'm not a fan of spacers, but I went ahead and put a 3/8 inch spacer underneath the carburetor. It's about the smallest one that I could find, but that would allow the installation of my brake vacuum adapter. And I didn't want to go with too much of a spacer because there's limited hood clearance on these Corvettes. So I got a 3/8 inch adapter on there, spacer, and that allowed the vacuum brakes to be hooked up and actually clear the carburetor, where the low profile elbow would actually clear the bottom of the carburetor without interference. And that seemed to work out fine. And at the same time, did some investigation on just how much air filter I could put on, and found out that I could actually go a 1/2 inch taller on my air filter. And so I'm ended up with a 3.5 inch high, 14 inch diameter air filter instead of the 3.5 that I had, and without any hood clearance problems. So I'm pretty happy with that. One other thing I wanted to talk about too is the PCV hookup wasn't that easy on this one. Most of the Holleys, the PCV valve comes, or PCV port actually comes out on the side right about here, and a short piece of hose from there over to the PCV valve. And this Quick Fuel, the PCV port actually comes out the back and actually extends out almost to the flush to the end of the secondary bowl. So it was a little bit of a tight turn to actually take a piece of this 3/8 inch hose and make a turn with that, because I was afraid it would kink or it just didn't look that nice. So I ended up buying a PCV valve hose that fits my Chevy truck. It's a K2500 1995 Chevrolet TBI pickup truck, and it used a hard plastic PCV line with a molded rubber elbow. So I'm basically using that rubber elbow that you can get from any auto parts place. Usually in the help section you'll find it. It's a molded elbow with a piece of hard plastic that usually goes on that truck, and that seemed to work out really nice. You can see I actually hooked it up to my carburetor at the back here. I got the rubber elbow here, and then a straight shot over to the PCV valve. And I installed the JEGS throttle bracket, which worked out very nice. It also had a small clearance problem right here on my engine lift hook, and by putting that 3/8 inch spacer, it also cleared that as well. So that worked out nice. It holds the throttle cable very tight. It lines up very well. One thing I didn't like about it was the springs. There's a double spring here, return spring, and with both springs on there and with this bracket set to the least tension, it is way high, way too much spring force. So when I took the one spring off, it seemed to help quite a bit. And in fact, it's about like I like it. Still, with the setting, is the least amount of tension as possible. So I want to have two springs on there like you're supposed to. So I actually, from McMaster Car, I ordered two springs very similar to the ones that I have, with about half the force. And I'm hoping that 2 of those springs on here, with maybe a setting slightly higher on the bracket here, would give me about the return spring that I want. I don't know why they chose such a heavy spring, but it is very heavy. It is too much, in my opinion. So that's a very nice product, with the exception of the spring. And I want to mention again, the carburetor is outstanding. Very impressed with it. It's got the 4-corner idle mixture, and I moved them a little bit, but ended up putting them back exactly where they had them set. And idle and startup and high speed and low speed and everything is absolutely excellent. So I'm going to take the camera off the tripod in a minute and show you a close-up of the spacer I put on, and maybe the PCV valve, so you can get an idea in case you ever have to do something like that. Before that, I'll show you the air filter I'm using. It's a black crinkle paint Proform filter. It's the drop base. That gives me a little extra hood clearance, and it allows me to use a little bit bigger filter. And this one here is slightly offset for the HEI distributor, so it only really goes on one way. If you go this way with it, you'll notice it fits on there without a problem, although it's very close to the number 1 wire right there, number 1 post. If you were to take this off and turn it around, you'll notice there is a slight offset in it, and it won't allow it to fit as well. You can't probably see it on the video, but this is pushed forward, and I'm really in contact with that wire there. So if you pick this up and turn it around, it drops right on. Fits pretty nice. And this is a 14-inch diameter, 3.5-inch high filter. I got it from Summit. Of course, the other part of the filter matches my valve cover. It's got the Chevrolet logo on it. It's got a pretty steep lid to it, so it opens up the area between the filter and the carburetor flange. Fits like so. So it turned out pretty nice. Now, if you'll notice, try to get a close-up of that spacer. You see it's right under the carburetor there. It's made by Transdapt. It's an open spacer. This is a single plane intake manifold, Torker 2, Edelbrock. And then another shot of the PCV valve. That's the molded elbow that I used. That fits a 95K 2500 Chevy TBI truck, and that in conjunction with some of the hardline and then a piece of 3/8" fuel vapor hose, I made my PCV line. So that concludes this video about the new quick fuel carburetor. I hope it helps you make a decision on one of your projects one day.